Hello, hello. You can call me Eben. I am the Eben Phantom, and just thought I'd come by and start trying to talk about the way I, in particular, like to use the Reason digital audio workstation. I'm going to start us off starting with drums. That's how I start off any track I'm working on, especially if I don't really have an idea about where I'd want to go past that. If I just want to start working on something, I'll probably do a quick drum rhythm first, and this is the way I like to do it. All right, so first off, I already have a combinator with some devices in. I'm going to explain how I end up routing them all up and everything in a second. This is a fairly quick or simple setup for the combinator device. I'll go over sizing and all of that for other things because there's some other fun stuff I like to do sometimes. So to start, like I said, I'll start off with a combinator. Normally, when you get to a combinator, you will be sized with the classic size. It'll be about right here. It'll start with 4 control knobs, 4 switches, and 2 wheels. That's the way every combinator starts off. I have gotten rid of that because I like changing up exactly what controls I am using. In older versions of Reason, you could really only have so many control knobs, so people got very creative in order to make sure everything was routed to where it needed to go, so that if you wanted to control some aspect of the sound you were crafting on the fly or as you're going along through the sequencer, you would be able to do that. But we'll get into that in a second. We will start off, therefore, with just the devices itself. Now, I've got this set up. I am only using sounds that are found in the Reason Factory Sound Bank, or I hope they're only in the Reason Factory Sound Bank. I haven't gone anywhere else to find those, and I'm fairly certain all of these sounds should be available no matter what version of Reason you are working with. I will be putting a list on the screen so that you can see exactly which ones I went to. And once I have all of them selected, like so, if I wanted to change what this is, I could just come over to this folder. Boom, it opens up my browser automatically for the Redrum Drum Computer and goes to the last place I searched when I was actually setting this up. So every time you go to a new device, do be aware that if you're looking for a preset or you are looking for a setup that you may have had, they will generally start looking in the last place you were searching for that device. But like I said, once you've got all of those set in and you hit tab to flip around the rack in and of itself, I don't need the browser anymore. You'll see here the way that everything is actually set up. You just have the main stereo output. It goes into the first 2 inputs on the combinator, and then from there that output goes here into the mix channel. You can't hear anything if you don't have anything set up to the mix channel. But I like these sounds, but depending on what I may be doing with them, the overall amount of modulation, is that the word I'm looking for? Probably not. The overall amount of changes you can make to the sound can get fairly out there. I'm going to try and keep things fairly simple. Like, for example, I have these 2 kick drums here, and for what I normally do, I like to have these at about the same level as far as the equalizer or any other effects I am running through them on. So I tend to put any similar sounds through a audio merger and splitter. As you're looking around the back, you see that you do have the inputs for the merger side and the outputs for the splitter side. Do be aware that if you want these outputs to go to more than one place, you will more than likely be taking, like, say, this merged input, bring it out over here, and then I can put it into the audio input for this EQ. And later, if once I start working on other types of sounds, I can just pull the output from here and put it into a compressor if I want to do something like side chaining. I just recently read something about someone using the synchronous effects device for side chaining. I'm going to look that in. I'm going to look up to that, see if it actually makes the process simpler. Because if you don't hide the cables, right? If you don't hit K to hide the cable clutter, eventually all of these wires, they can add up and get pretty distracting or hard to follow. So let's see, let's move these all the way over here since I'm going to start parceling out these sounds. First, over to my equalizer. And so now from here, whenever I want to add any other changes to the sound, I can make them as I go. I do already have this one set up at some places where I like to keep my kick drums. May or may not sound the best, but that's what sound design is all about. At the moment, I don't really need to worry about actually how it sounds coming through this equalizer, as this is more for demonstration purposes. You know what? Scratch that. I may have skipped a few steps. Generally, once you've got your sounds, you may or may not want to immediately go to laying them out to see how they sound. The reason I like to use Redrum is because Redrum has its own pattern sequencer, so that you can get a feel for how they sound, how drums sound in concert when they're being struck either at the same time or just after each other. See how those sounds mix and blend, so you can have an idea about what you'd want to do, and you can always alter that later. So I'll just put I like the drum and bass one, so I will up the steps all the way to 64 1/16 notes, right? So it goes all the way up all those steps, and I can just start laying out a rhythm should I want to. And yeah, I'm gonna do this kind of drum and bassy one with the first kick on the first and no, did I do that on all of them? No, didn't mean to do that. Just first and 11th, first and 11th, right? So when you run that, make sure you have enable pattern selection on. If that orange light's on, you can't. You can run the pattern. If it's not, you can't. And you've already got something going, so you can let it run as you want, and you can just start finding other places you might want to put these particular sounds. And it'll just run completely through on its own. You don't have to keep telling the pattern to run over and over again. It'll just keep going as long as you're not actually playing through the sequencer. You know, once you've got an idea about where you want these, you can just move on to the next device or the next instrument just to see whereabouts you want these sounds. And you can just go on from here. Now, I will more than likely either A, be cutting soon, or just letting it play out. But yeah, once you've, I don't want to tell you exactly what kind of pattern to use. Some people will be telling you that there is a end-all be-all way to do things. I'm not one of those people. Have fun. But I will be working out a pattern I might want to use, and through the power of editing, there won't be any real difference here. And when you finally do have a pattern you like, you can just sort of let it go as it is. And while I'm letting that go, I will go ahead and start routing it into these other effects just to see whereabouts I would actually end up with my sound. Oh no, can't hear you anymore. And at the moment, right, all of these devices, they are bypassed. So at the moment, they're not making any actual difference on the sound that is being produced. All you have to do is move that to the on position, not the off position. The off position will not let any audio signal through. Now, you see I do have some EQ curves sort of already worked out. Now, the vast majority of what I'm looking for when I'm doing this is basically, since I've got three different frequency ranges of instrument, I've got low range drum sounds, mid range, and high end. I basically just want to make sure that altogether those sounds do not bleed into each other anywhere on the frequency spectrum. I can always shift it however I may need to. And, you know, you can play around with the way things sound. Very slightly, right? And to go even further, since we're keeping this chain relatively simple, you know, add a little distortion. These drums might feel a little weak, so you can bump them up a little bit. If in this case, this is just distortion, right? So you can go through layer by layer and play around with the different portions. And, you know, playing around with all those. Later on, here in a bit, I will be showing you ways to automate so that you don't have to, I mean, I'm just working with the computer, so I don't have a lot of control devices to play around with making actual recordings as I'm going, so I have to sort of do everything through the sequencer here. Well, yeah, I'm going to bypass these for now, but yeah, that is how I set up my drums just to start. Next up, we will be getting into actually playing around with the Combinator itself, playing around with knobs and different things you might want to control. So until then, keep making.